Welcome to Exit Like a Boss. I'm going to show you, having helped nearly 800 business owners work through a 21-step process to exit like a boss, how you can do it, what you need to know, the steps you need to take, and what's actually involved in you and your business being able to maximize value and successfully exit like a boss. Hope you enjoy it. In this episode of Exit Like a Boss, we're going to talk about corporate governance. It's often misused and it's often misunderstood, particularly by small to medium business owners. Now, the first thing is we don't need to go over the top here. If you've got a very small business, then perhaps what I'm going to describe in terms of corporate governance for a larger business is not necessary. But let me tell you what is necessary. You need to have the structure and discipline that corporate governance brings you in place in your business, even if it's only small. So if you've got a small family-owned business, your corporate governance most likely looks like dinner most nights. You sit down with your family members that work in the business and you talk about things that happen during the day. You talk about that staff member that's a problem. You talked about that customer that's causing issues. You talked about the outstanding accounts that haven't paid you and you've got to collect them. That at a very loose level, that's a bit of corporate governance going on right there. But it's not effective. It also makes dinner pretty boring. But what's important is to understand what we could do that looks like corporate governance, even at that smaller end of town. And then we're going to start to talk about, as the business grows, what you need to put in place. Now, lots of small businesses actually start with what I would call an advisory board. Go and get an advisor. Perhaps that's your accountant. Perhaps that's a business coach. Perhaps that's some other sort of mentor or an industry expert or somebody that you've worked with before that you respect and that you can listen to. They would then run a monthly meeting. Now, in a larger business, this is a board meeting, and companies like Westpac and BHP have a board meeting every month. They've got independent directors. We'll talk about that sort of thing in a moment. This is more about stopping for 2 hours, let's say, on a Wednesday afternoon once a month to sit down and look at the business in detail. So the first thing is you've got to have some reports. You've got to have some information. Now, that might be the profit and loss. It might be the profit and loss for last month against your budget. How did you perform? Were you over or under budget? What areas were weak or what areas dragged you down? Or how did you perform in areas that are going really strongly? It might also be a balance sheet, a list of customers that owe you money, a list of people that you owe money to or payments you've got to make. And it should also include some other things like a HR report, people report. If you've got a general manager running the business, it should include a general manager's report. It's an overall view of the business, marketing report, sales report. I would basically go and get reports in each section or department of your business. Now, I'm not talking about a book. I'm talking about a one-page report from the sales manager. What opportunities are we working on? How many open proposals have we got? What's our close rate last month? What revenue am I projecting next month, given the quotes or the proposals we've sent out? And what do we need to do to realise that or make sure that happens? That's simple, one page. But what it does do is two things. Firstly, it introduces discipline for our staff. Our staff know we need the reports. They know we need them before the meeting. It's no good doing them later. They know that the information needs to be detailed and correct, and they need to think about what they're putting in the reports and also what they're recommending as a result of the information. It's not just about presenting raw information. The sales manager might recommend we go and employ another person in another office or another state because that state's grown 20% 4 months in a row, for example. It's also about then not only the staff having the discipline, but you as the owner having the discipline and structure to stop and look at that information and make some strategic decisions. Corporate governance is not about day-to-day. It's not about, the day-to-day operations of the business, about that customer or that quote or that proposal. It should be much more high level than that. It should be an overview of the business. How's it performing? Where's it weak? Where do we need to focus some attention? What does our strategy look like? Now, we've already talked during the podcast of Exit Like a Boss about strategic financials, about our strategic business plan, about beginning with the end in mind and having our exit options sorted out. That should be part of the board meeting. During that advisory board meeting, we should actually be talking about those key things to the business. Are we on track with our business model? Are our financials actually tracking towards that strategy? Are we getting closer to our exit every time we meet? Or are we doing some things that are throwing us off that? Now, obviously, as the business gets larger, what we're actually going to start thinking about is who do we want involved in that corporate governance program? I sit on a number of boards with clients, larger businesses, and I act as a chairman for 2 of them. But it's also about understanding as an owner, what am I not great at? What weaknesses do I have? Now, I have a financial background, so I don't need someone on my board that's an accountant. But I'm not a marketing person, so maybe I need someone on my board who's got some marketing expertise. Or maybe I'm trying to get into a new area, a new set of customers or a new industry focus for my business. And I've got somebody on my board who's actually from that industry and knows exactly who to talk to and how to get into, how to open those doors. So as the business gets larger, it's no longer mum and dad and the accountant and maybe a business coach. Now what we do is put together a board, still might have mum and dad on it, still might have the accountant on it because that financial expertise is important, but it might have one or two or even more independent directors, external parties who can walk like me, who don't work in the business day to day, don't know all the staff day to day, don't know the day-to-day issues in the business because they don't need to and we don't want them to. What we want them to do is walk in and challenge the owners, challenge the management team, ask questions, run ideas past them and say, well, hang on a minute, have you really thought this through? I'm not sure that part B is a great idea. Did you think about doing X? Have you done a cost-benefit analysis on this project? Or that project sounds great, but if it doesn't work, is there a point where we're going to pull the pin, where we're going to stop and say, okay, we're not spending any more time or money on that? Having that external party, independent, high-level strategic thinker, review what you're doing, challenge you as the owner or manager or CEO, challenge the management team, but also provide some mentoring and some leadership and guidance around what you should be focusing on, what you should be doing next and how you can improve. As the business gets larger, it's quite common to invite an employee or an executive within the business to act as a director on the board, but you'll also have some non-executive directors, people outside the business that are independent with particular expertise. What that creates is two things. As I said before, the discipline for your team to prepare reports and to think about what they're presenting to the board and to know that the board's going to look at it, review it and act on it. But it's also about structure. It's also about challenging people not to focus on the wrong areas, challenging people to focus on what actually makes the business work and will improve value. And a good corporate governance structure should do that. The other thing that it does, again, is reduce risk, because I've now got a structure in place and some discipline around decision making. We use a tool called a decision rights manual. And it's basically a manual that talks about who has the right to make what decision. At what level within my staff or within my team am I allowing people to spend $500 to buy paper for the printer or to buy a new toner cartridge? Now, in my business, I don't want to know about that. I don't want people asking me permission to do that. And I don't want people slowing down or thinking about it or doing some analysis. If the printer needs toner, go and buy the toner. However, if the printer breaks down, I probably don't want that person to spend $12,500 on a new printer. That might need to come to the office manager or the practice manager. If it's a $125,000 printer, that might actually need to come to the CEO or the general manager. And if it's a $500,000 piece of equipment, then that might actually need to come to the board. Now, why am I doing that? Two reasons. One, I want to protect people within the business. I want them to know they can make decisions, make them quickly and act on them without waiting to ask me or anybody else in the business. But secondly, I'm protecting the business because sometimes people, including us as owners or CEOs or experienced managers and leaders, make mistakes. That decision rights manual, part of corporate governance, should prevent us making mistakes that cost a lot of money. Now, personally, I'm happy to make a mistake that costs $500. I'm not happy, but I'm okay with it because it's part of running a business. You are going to make mistakes. I'm not happy at all about making a mistake that's going to cost $50,000 or $100,000. So I want to make sure I've got someone reviewing that, someone looking at it, someone questioning me, someone making sure it is actually the right decision. Putting a corporate governance structure in place will actually deliver that. It's all about two things, structure and discipline. And businesses that have got that in place are inherently less risky and therefore more valuable, which will help you as a business owner work out how you can use corporate governance to help you exit like a boss.